This is a conversation that we are titling The Art of Rolfing between two certified advanced Rolfers, Briah Anson from Minneapolis, Minnesota, with over 43 years of experience, and Miranda Dayvis with over 35 years of Rolfing experience from Ottawa, Canada. The idea, this is what's coming to me. I think we're just going to have to trust the flow here.
Yeah.
All right, it's a conversation. That one of the things that has been with me my entire career, 43 years, is a statement that I read from Ida Rolf that says that Rolfing, that this work that she created is perhaps the first conscious attempt at human evolution, the conscious evolution of human structure.
Yes.
And that has always intrigued me.
Yes.
Like, what does this mean?
Exactly. Like
How do we accomplish this?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what does that evoke for you? What does that bring up?
Well, it's certainly a question that I've had too, since because of my own experience with the Rolfing, and then seeing what happens with clients, like something is evoked through the process.
Yeah.
Not with everybody, but for some, it's really it starts opening them up to something else, and then it's like the beginning of a journey, and things. So conscious. It's like, but that's it. So it's this ongoing inquiry, and it takes you afield to different places. It takes you to art. It takes you to architecture. It takes you to the connection with the earth. It takes you to our relatedness to one another. Mm-hmm. And how does that all play out, you know?
Mm-hmm. And to nature.
And to nature.
Which we're getting more and more away from.
Yes.
And there are fewer and fewer trees.
Fewer and fewer trees. And it's like we had that Dureco here. It was painful to see all those trees down. It was like unbelievably
in your neighborhood,
in throughout the city
of Ottawa.
Ottawa. It's just unbelievable, and we need that connection. There's something in that that's so profound for us, and as we lose that, we lose this. You know, and that's what we need to bring back. And I think it's but we have to become aware that we've lost it. You know, we need to come back to it and make a conscious effort, not only for ourselves, but for the earth. Because we don't live separate from the earth.
It has to start with the self.
It has to start with the self. And I think we need to also be aware of the language, because there's powerful forces that use language to distance us. And I think environment, that word, we want to choose another word that's more related, because Dr. Rolf talked about everything works in relationship.
To everything else.
To everything else. So it's our relationship to earth. But environment is
separate.
It's separate. We need words that connect us so that we have that relatedness to each other, to earth. And it also gets into that when we have language that creates that understanding, then it opens, when we have understanding with two people, the space between us gets bigger. And there's more in the space. There's more, we have access to greater things when there is understanding. So, and it's that's what we want to build, is that relationship and understanding, so that we realize like what I do has impact into the world. You know, it's not like, oh, it's just something separate and isolated and it has no impact.
What this makes me think of, particularly at this time, that there are so many people leaving their jobs, so many people retiring, so many people like questioning, many people just want to retire, go to beautiful places. Well, beautiful places are being destroyed by all kinds of weather. But what is it that is guiding us as human beings at this time, this time of such important transitions on the earth?
Yeah.
Like, why are we here? How do we proceed? What has value?
Yeah. And I think that's the question a lot of people are doing is like, what's really valuable to me? What means something? And that's why I think there's this mass exodus of these different fields of work where people are just, there's a term they use for it, quietly, resigning. Exiting, right? And I think that quiet exiting is like, what's the meaning of their work? Like, does it have any value? It's not, you don't want to be like part of the industrial factory where it's just like, okay, well, I'm going to put this thing in to that slot. There's more to it. And I think with this whole thing of the fourth industrial revolution, as they call it, it's like, we got to just say, that's not the reality we want to move into. And I think we need to do it from a real, this connectedness, this other consciousness, which is more conscious, right? Like it more awareness. And I think there's this movement happening in that. And people are standing up to it and saying, no, I'm no longer willing to live that life, based on this fictitious.
Retire and go somewhere beautiful, which there are fewer and fewer of those places, and it takes more and more money and resources.
Yeah.
And there are more and more diseases and health challenges.
Yeah.
So what does it mean to have wealth?
Yes.
What is true wealth?
Exactly.
Where does that start?
Yeah.
And, I'm so aware at being the age I am that most people I know have retired and they're having hip and shoulder and arm, they're having all kinds of replacements, cancers, all these diseases. And of course, we're so aware of what's happened with this pandemic. So the question becomes, how do you achieve health? What is health?
Yeah.
What would you say about that? Because when I think of health, I think of, for me, the definition of freedom.
Absolutely.
Freedom from disease, or if you're starting to get sick or something happens, how do you self-correct, or how do you get a correction towards a higher state of order?
That's right.
In other words, how do you take those events as opportunities to evolve your health, not just patch up?
That's right.
But really go through transformative processes that help us embrace what true health means.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of, there's a lot of stuff, even in the natural health, where it's like, okay, if you take these pills, they're not medical pills, but they're supplements, and that's going to make it right. Well, that's not health. Maybe part of health and part of regaining health, but I think
that's symptomatic.
That's symptomatic again, right?
Yeah.
And real health is just that you feel well and alive, and you want to interact with life, Again, right? It's that.
Instead of contract from life.
Exactly.
The contraction that's where everything gets more, that's what happens as people are really getting closer to death.
That's right.
That contraction.
And there's a
into themselves, their bodies, away from others.
Right. And they start really getting pulled into all the symptoms. And then they work at
correcting symptoms.
Or treating symptoms. And because we don't really have, what we need is, what is really aliveness? What is it to really be alive? And I think there's this unspoken thing about aging,
Right.
Because I see it with clients. Their
Right.
doctors say, well, you're 60. It's just part of getting old.
You're just aging.
You're just aging.
Just be well with it.
Yeah, just accept it. And you know, I get many clients coming in, you know, in their 60s, and that's what they've been told. And it's like, hell no. Let's see what we can do here. We got to, you know, and it's getting...
Let's make you better than perhaps you've ever been.
Exactly.
Now, that's radical.
That's radical. But it's possible.
Yes.
It's possible.
Because we're doing it every day.
Every day. So that paradigm has been proven wrong.
Yeah.
And it's not the paradigm we want to live into.
Right.
We want to live into the paradigm of possibility.
And aliveness.
Yes. Exactly.
And how do we move from knowledge into wisdom?
Exactly.
Those are two very different things.
They're very different things.
So people are spending a whole lifetime collecting all this knowledge.
And
they don't know what to do with it.
And
which
that's
gets back to the purpose of why are we here?
Yeah.
What is the purpose of living artfully?
Yes.
How do we do that?
And
how do we find what is our true potential?
Yeah.
And most people, to me, seem like they're going through life, working jobs, getting old, suffering with their maladies, managing all their pain and suffering, and then dying.
That's right. Yeah. And what's missing from that that period is inspiration and you know, like experience of trying different things. Like, why do we earn money, right? To have experiences that hopefully have us evolve and grow. I mean, some of it's not great, but it's still an experience. But out of that experience, you mine the gold, like we were talking about yesterday, right? It's like, yeah, we have, and I think that's why we have the mass exodus, because people are starting to go, this isn't right, you know? It's like something's not right here. And they're exploring other things, but yeah, it's really...
I'm running into people, like even the guy at the U-Haul, the manager.
Yeah.
I really liked him, and I thought to myself, I wonder why this guy's here. I said, oh, how'd you end up here? Well, I was in finance, and I wanted to try something different. I'm going, to be the manager of a U-Haul.
Yeah.
And I want to pursue the conversation with this guy. I was just renting it for the day, but obviously... he was not fulfilled there.
Yeah.
Now this is a job to make him some money so that he can, he's probably thinking, I can figure it out.
Yeah.
But again, if he doesn't have somebody interfere with it or interact in his process, he may just jump around like that.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
And it made me think, how many people are doing that right now?
Yeah, that's right. Like, that's a really good question, because I think a lot are, and they need something, right, to move along that trajectory.
People are, in the midst of this chaos, seeking some kind of purpose.
Yeah.
And they don't know how to move towards it.
Yeah. And I think that's it. When you find something that just, you know, is...
Enlivening.
Like doing something that you wake up and it's not a job. Like... It's not
part of their purpose.
It's part of their purpose, right? Like, you wake up every day and go, man, who am I going to see today? Like, what's coming? You know, what kind of challenges and stuff like that.
Which leads me to this next part. That takes some degree of security within self.
Yeah. To
be able to walk out into the world in that way. Asking the questions.
Yeah.
And wanting to welcome new input. Yeah.
Yeah, and that security is, we have this thing in our culture around security. It's like, it's a job, it's this, it's that. You know, what defines your sense of security?
What is your container?
Yeah, what is your container? You know, and it's that willingness to go, well, you know, like, okay, I'm here. And I've done this, and it's stepping up, asking that question, and it's like, it's kind of like, what's in my beingness that needs to transform? And you can be quite content and quite well developed here, But I think that we talked about that desire for more, right? There's always that desire for more. And I think that's the thing that creates that polarity of energy that draws us into seeking higher consciousness. You know, it's always some sort of desire.
So bringing this back to the conversation about Rolfing and what Ida Rolf said towards the end of her life, that when people would tell her how great Rolfing was and how it cured their this bellyache or that bellyache, you know, their neck, their low back or whatever, and she said that really what she was really after and the purpose of her life was, you know, the exploration of what is the human potential.
Exactly.
That really was her starting point.
It was. And you know, the amazing thing is people come in at all different places in their life, and you have to start with where they're at. Like if it's like a back pain or a neck pain, you start
plantar fasciitis, whatever it is.
It's the thing that got them there, right? And you're working with that thing because that's where they're tied up, so to speak. And that's the beginning of the dialogue. But then it evolves. You know, usually that goes away very quickly and then it becomes something else, right? But it's like what gets them on the path, you know, and it'll be different for every person. But
so when you think about your experience and through your work career with people, and people come in with all this, what we call the random body structure. What have been the guiding principles that have endured as you have done your practice of Rolfing?
Oh, you know, it's always, you know, like I hear Ida, like, you know, like sometimes people walk in and you go, oh my God, what am I gonna do here, right? And I hear Ida's words like, you Rolf them. And you begin, and
you roll up your sleeves.
You roll up your sleeves and you start. And it's in that one step takes you to the next step, to the next step. And then these things emerge that you could never have imagined.
And talk to me about that. What would make that different from massage in terms of what are the principles that have guided you, that you're working with?
You know, fundamental. The principles are her recipe.
Yes.
Like there was something.
The 10 session
recipe. The recipe.
So talk to me about the recipe.
And I did that recipe over and over again, but it was never the same, you know. And sometimes you just dance within that recipe. It's not rigid. It's like there's something in there that's so. Even in the numbers, if you look at the numbers and you base it to numerology, like Y10, you know, there's 9 and then you start over at another level amplified by the 0.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You look at the numbers and it's like 1, Y1, Y2, like where does 2 take you? 1 is here. We're up in 1 realm. We go down to 2 legs. 3, we're on the sides again. Uneven.
Yeah, and creating space.
Front right?
to back.
And it's more 3-dimensional. 4 gets structure.
Yeah.
Right? 4 is about structure.
Yeah, from the ground up.
From the ground.
The core line up through the inside of the legs, which goes right up into the core, right up into the spine, into the 2 cylinders that are connected by the spine.
Exactly. 4, and then 5, you've got
the Da Vinci expansion of the body with the arms and the legs out, and the lift through the core, and then you've got 6, the whole center of the back line, and the center of the 2 cylinders from the back side.
That's right.
And then we go to
and
7.
6, if you look at 6. It, is 3 and 3.
Yeah.
When you do 3, you're on your side, right?
Yeah.
Right? And then 7.
Yeah.
Right?
Just in terms of that evocation of the line up through the middle of the neck and the head, the cranium reaching for the sky.
Exactly.
Yeah. So by that time, by 7, we've got the 2 directions.
Yes.
The down into the earth, and then the up into the sky.
Yes.
And then the last 3 sessions, the integrating ones, integrating, the legs into the core, or the arms and shoulders into the core, and then connecting it all up through all the fascial planes.
Yeah.
We're into a whole new dimension.
We're into a whole new dimension.
Yeah. So that's the basic framework.
That's the framework. And I dance with that framework, because it's not, 10 is just the model.
Yeah.
But within that model, I dance. I'm not doing just 10.
Right.
Right? Like it doesn't, sometimes I have to do different things in there before I get to the other stuff where you're really just integrating it all. So it's...
Or it can take more than one session to complete that session.
Absolutely.
But the goals, the more I have worked through all these years, that the better job you do of addressing the goals of each session, it's really setting up the work of not only the next session, but all the way through the whole series.
That's right.
But you have to have this deep, profound understanding of the line, of that total alignment, which has to do actually with the creation of space.
That's right.
Around that vertical line.
That's right.
That we are creating multidimensional space.
That's right.
And in order to create that multidimensional space, given how compressed and tight people are from every single direction, it to do more, it may take more than one session to create, to address the goals of that one session.
That's right.
But we're doing it sequentially.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There is something in that sequential process. And even if you try to step out of that and you follow through the changes, you're going to go, man, I got to go to their back now after doing 5. Like you just, even if you forget that you've done 5 or something, and then you go, oh yeah, I got to go. The back looks really tight. Oh, of course, because I did 5.
Yeah.
It just keeps showing up.
It keeps revealing itself. That there is almost like a holy grail here that Ida tapped into, because even at the end of her life, when people said, how did you figure out the series? Because it's so brilliant. She would just say, never mind that. Really, she was in contact with all the great mystics, and I think this was downloaded.
It was downloaded.
Certainly, she was a great, she had her PhD in biochemistry. She was a great anatomist. She studied cranial osteopathy with the osteopaths. She just studied so many things, atomic physics. I mean, so all of this was grounded in her study of science.
Yeah, and she's also studied yoga, reflexology, like homeopathy.
She taught herself the entire materia medica when she was in Europe. So, and these are about principles. Homeopathy is all about the application of principles, like cures like. How do you create health? How do you work with the vital force of the body? What is disease? How do you interact with the body's natural vitality? Right? This is what we're doing.
That's what we're doing. Absolutely.
So we are literally evoking wellness by applying by working with these sessions sequentially. We're actually evoking the line. We're evoking aliveness, spaciousness, and then like Ida said, what we're basically doing, we're not the therapists, we're just preparing the body to receive the healing force from the gravitational field. What does that mean? See, this sounds like very esoteric, but it truly is.
It is, because we're affected by those forces. It's not like high woo-woo. We live in those fields. And we, if we walk through a forest, we can feel the trees. Like we're walking through this field, and it's like denying such a huge part of our humanity by not acknowledging that. And we need to be aware that we live within these fields. Right?
Exactly.
And we gain energy. If we're lined up and we move through these fields, we can actually generate energy within our being. when we're lined up, right? We're interacting, we're engaging in the field, and it's nourishing us. We're not just nourished by food and supplements. We're nourished by, mostly by these fields.
What's interesting to me is that the most powerful universal exercise or movement of the body is walking.
Yes.
And how primary is that? That is primary locomotion of a two-legged being upright in gravity and being able to move.
Yes.
And what we're talking about is not just movement in a stilted, awkward way, but how it's the evocation of grace.
Yes.
And beauty in the body.
Yeah.
That the body's intended to move gracefully through space.
And the thing that I find, and this is a conversation I have with clients, I said, we are born into this body, but we're never really trained how to live within the body or to become a conscious. Like, we just come in and we just kind of hang off our bones.
Yeah.
People come in and they're hanging off their bones. They don't realize that, when you change, you access that dynamic lift and space in the body. The world, your world changes, right? But it's like we're not trained in our humanity, not at all. We're taught all kinds of stuff at school, but nothing to do with what it is to be human.
Exactly.
And that's a missing. That's a huge missing, because we're human.
Yeah.
And we have spent no time in education.
And the most amazing thing, with every session I have experienced, my over 40 years of work, every time I receive a Rolfing session, I feel more human.
Yes.
More like my true self.
Yes.
Less in my head.
Yes.
I'm not having to think about what I'm doing next. I am just more aligned with my beingness.
Yes.
And then you have to think about how in our world, people's sympathetic nervous system has been so activated due to all the kinds of trauma.
Yeah.
And people have less and less space
That's
within
right.
them.
Yeah.
And that whenever there's an injury, there's a lack of space. Or when there's some kind of emotional trauma, like with a partner or a friend, and we contract.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
Yeah.
We lose that sense of buoyancy and expression and aliveness.
Yeah.
And that is like a trauma to the body. The body is recording, and we know this, that every cell has its own little nervous system called the cytoskeleton.
Yeah.
And now people are saying, oh yes, it's held in the, like trauma's held in the connective tissue. Well, Ida Rolf knew this in the 1940s, 20s.
Yeah.
Like this is nothing new.
No.
This is what Rolfing has been about.
Yeah.
The work of Vanderkolk, Bessel Vanderkolk, talking about trauma. He says that Rolfing has been the most significant thing he's ever done to deal with his own trauma.
Yeah.
Of his survival in Holland during the war with all those bombs.
Yeah.
That helped him release all of that trauma.
Yes.
He speaks of this all the time.
Yes.
Now, how many people are going to Rolfing? He speaks of it with every workshop.
Yeah. And it's like, it takes a while, like you can't just conceptually convey that to somebody.
No.
You cannot conceptually convey the Rolfing experience to somebody, or what it is to gain space within the body and free up the scarring that happens from trauma. Conceptually, it's so different when you get it experientially, because that's like wisdom, right? Wisdom comes through the experience of, this is available. Like one cannot conceptually know that. And that's the thing with living in this intellectual, conceptual world. You can't conceptualize what you're going to do in a certain situation until you're in it, because all the energies that are present aren't there yet. So how can you interact with it
in a new way?
In a new way, when you're not there yet. You can't conceptualize, well, I would do this and this and this. Well, you don't know what you would do until you're in that. And a lot of the freeing up is people don't even know they're locked in that paradigm.
Exactly. They know that they're locked up in pain.
Yes, they know the pain and they have a language for the pain. But they don't, because they haven't been out of it, they don't have a language for the other.
Right.
And the only way to get it is to move through that trauma, come out of it, whatever, and it's not automatic, and you can't just talk your way out of it. You can't do talk therapy alone to get out of it, because it's still...
Talk therapy gives you a language, gives you an awareness,
Yeah.
but it doesn't get it out of your body.
That's right.
It doesn't get it out of your consciousness.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Out of the mind.
Yeah.
So how do we proceed with this in the world? How can we better communicate the gift that Dr. Rolf has brought into the world?
Yeah.
This
it's really
kind of leads me to think about the work of art and
Yeah.
sculpture
Yes.
and architecture.
Yes.
Like what are those pieces that endure through the centuries?
Yes.
What is it that they have as principles, living principles?
I think as living principles, there's something within those pieces of art or that architecture that is timeless. And it continues, people continue to be moved by it. They continue to have a dialogue about it. They still maintain that relatedness to a period that could have been hundreds of years ago, right? But something is continuous within that
What are the principles?
form. So there's something...
What are the principles that you see in the art and in the architecture and those places that people just feel?
I think it's got to do with space.
Yeah.
It's got to do with light. It's got to do with form.
Balance.
Balance.
Yeah.
Balance for sure, right?
Yeah.
There's some sort of integrity in
The alignment.
the alignment and the communication, because there's when you speak to somebody and you live what you speak, you convey integrity, right? You're not just spouting words, but you live what you speak, so the person you're talking to feels the integrity of the conversation, not consciously necessarily, but they feel it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's I think that happens. There's an integrity that people tap into from the art form, from the architecture. Like
Like places like Notre Dame.
Yes.
And how amazing that you have this big fire and everyone has contributed hundreds of millions of dollars for the rebuilding, the restoration
Yes.
of that treasure.
Yes.
Because so many people have spent time there, have
Yes.
been inspired,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
How these structures
And that's
inspire our aliveness,
that's right.
our oneness, right?
Yes. And I think the inspiration is the big thing. Like these pieces of art, they evoke something, which is that inspiration connects us with something greater within ourselves. It's just not there.
Well, think of it this. Growing up as an athlete and as a dancer, and even going to tennis matches or golf matches or soccer, even as a child, I was inspired by watching these athletes or dancers that moved with such grace and had beautiful form.
Yes.
Even as a child, I was greatly inspired by that.
Yes.
And to this day, I can watch anyone in any sport. I don't even have to know diddly about it. And I did that once with a famous baseball pitcher that, 3/4 of the way through the Rolfing series, came in and said, yeah, I'm not pitching right. And I asked if I could go watch him pitch.
Yeah.
Imagine.
Yes.
What I know about baseball, nothing. But what I saw was that he was so freed up that he didn't need to effort more. He needed to effort less.
Cool.
And he became the first pitcher pitching close to 100 miles an hour.
Wow.
See? Because it came through ease.
Yes.
It came through his, like, just using his form
Yes.
to deliver.
Yes.
And there's a certain beauty in that. It's powerful, but it's beautiful to watch.
Yes.
It magnetizes you.
Yes.
And so I think that there's something very beautiful when you see a human figure, moving through space beautifully. I've seen women that look beautiful, and here they are in these high heels.
Yeah.
And they've got a beautiful figure, but it's all chunked in segments.
That's right.
And you watch them move, and all of a sudden they look ugly.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
And how many people are moving through space in a graceful way?
Exactly.
And if they're not moving through space in a graceful way, they're all, randomly put together, how else are they consciously moving through space or not?
Exactly.
With the rest of their life.
Yes. Yeah.
And what I've been able to observe even in small children where kids were brought in that, let's say, had a hip dysplasia or whatever, and this gets dealt with through the Rolfing, and the next thing I hear is that this child is like a champion skateboarder, right?
Yes.
They couldn't even be at recess before.
Right.
Or another one that had the same problem became a professional dancer.
Yes.
See, like we don't even know what that child is capable
That's right.
of.
And I think that's exactly
And
it.
these children that get Rolfed become very confident
Yes.
in themselves.
Absolutely.
And that has been an amazing journey to witness these children becoming very confident.
Yeah.
They know that there's a rightness about their body.
That's right.
They're, even at age 4, a kid comes in and tells me, I don't like the way my butt sticks out. Kids
Yeah.
are making fun of her, or
Yeah.
like at age 8.
Right.
I don't like the way my butt sticks out.
Yeah.
And with every session, looking in the mirror and
Yeah.
watching a child like their body
Yes.
and developing this confidence that comes through this proper alignment of the body.
And and that's the thing that I see. Like, I work on a lot of young teenagers, and they go from being these, that having all the teenage
Gangly.
stuff, gangly, and they become more confident, like you say. And what you do is you bring them into their bodies so that they're comfortable in their body, and that's what happens when you. With teenage, when you Rolf them, they get confident and they get comfortable in their body, and they start to relate differently to the world
And to their peer group.
Absolutely.
And they don't feel so isolated.
Yeah.
And one of the issues that's really coming out right now is the amount of teenage suicide.
Yeah.
Most of them, my dentist was even saying that 3/4 of the teenagers that she sees in her practice are on some, because they
On
have to know what medications
Yep.
for their mental depressions
yeah.
or
And it is-
anxiety, which to me is just the sympathetic nervous system being out of whack, just being overstimulated all the time.
all the time, and the all the stuff on the, like, that stuff is, it's been designed to get these kids addicted, and it affects their neurological system.
Right.
They're and then they're going on, oh, how many likes do I have? And it's not healthy for kids. It's really...
So it becomes really, really critical thinking about, at a time of such randomness out there in the world, that we are being asked to be even more centered physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually.
Yes.
So that we can decide, so that the person can decide how they're going to move literally into their life.
Yeah. And see, I think what's happened is, if you look at the way people move, there's an evolutionary process in the freedom of their movement. If you watch dancers from 50 years ago to dancers now, you go, wow, right?
Yeah.
There's been this evolution, and we need to stay tuned to that evolution within the body itself as Rolfers. Like, because where are we moving to? But we're right now in a paradigm where the physical body is not moving. People are sitting. People are sitting at a phenomenal rate now. We're not meant to be
with their phone, with their computers.
Yeah, we're not meant to be that inactive and taking stimulus just with, visual, mental, but the body's not really engaged. The body is part of the integration of consciousness to the world, and it's missing. It's missing. Everybody's sitting for hours, and their back gets sore, their neck gets sore. But that's the body saying, man, I got to move, right? I got to move, move me, So there's this thing that's happening right now.
Where it becomes even more important as practitioners of this work to really bring everyone back to first principles based on the lineage of Ida Rolf, of Dr. Rolf, and what are her guiding principles.
Yes.
And it is based on embodying ourselves, that work in our own bodies, which means receiving the work.
Absolutely.
And it also means really reading over and over and over what she has taught.
Yes.
And in imbuing that that intention of carrying the line, that the power of a word that sounds so vague is the difference between my randomly touching a body and my touching it with the intention to evoke their potential. And the line is a very different touch.
It's
a very different connection to that body and to that person and to their higher self. To me, that's the difference between going to a practitioner that is carrying that lineage or legacy versus one that gets distracted in and brought into people's wanting you to pay attention to their symptoms. And this is a constant.
It's constant.
Constant thing that every practitioner needs to be aware of.
They need to be aware of it because the world is trained to deal with symptoms. And we need to, that's just like the red herring, right?
Right.
And you don't want to be following the red herring because there's more that they can access other than the symptoms. And the symptom is just maybe the inroad to whatever. It's like, it's real, but okay, let's use that as an inroad to the deeper stuff that we're going to access within you. But
So that to me speaks again to that the idea of health equaling freedom. And a freedom to be able to choose or maybe even get in touch with your destiny, with your own purpose, your sole purpose on this planet at this time. Feels really critical.
It's very, I agree. It's right. It's really, we're being called. It's a time we can move into a completely different era of being human on this planet, but we have to take it on. It's not like there's no one person coming to save us. It's each individual has to access within themselves that beingness that is part of that oneness, that evolution, that greater, that bigness.
And that's where I think, to get back to when people are at ease, like Ida Rolf said, in their own carriage, in their own body, they're at ease in the world.
They're at ease in the world,
And so the kind of almost sort of like the lifeblood of Rolfing becomes even more important at this time.
And you never know where somebody ends up through the series. You just don't know. That's the magic, right? It's just you don't. It's wonderful, but But to have that consciousness, that awareness, to guide that intention, individual after individual, it gets into the world.
It gets into the world. Those are the ripples.
Those are the ripples.
So
It
this
gets-
this is the work
yeah,
that we are doing.
yeah.
And this is the work that Dr. Rolf understood
That's what she
of the
understood.
oneness of the
Yeah.
person and the environment.
And the environment.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Because there's a familiarity that happens. You know, when you get people that are opened up, there's this familiarity.
Say more.
So it's like we recognize that in another person on an unconscious, like we just know, like, oh, and you can pick it up, and you can, when you're talking to somebody, and all of a sudden you're just in that space. That's a bigger space.
That's a bigger space.
That's
right.
a bigger space.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
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 So that's where the one becomes 10,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Kind of like the interconnectedness
Yeah.
of all life and beings.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Yeah.
Becomes more of a reality.
Yeah.
Where people feel less of the separation.
Yeah. And that's the pain they live in, right? The separation is the pain.
Is the pain.
It's the pain.
Yeah.
And they long to get, you know, and it may show up as in the shoulder, but the real separation is the pain. It's
pain.
like we long to be,
Right.
have that connectedness and relatedness and, you know, and yeah.
I think this, anything you want to...
I think we're good for now.
Good for now.
Yeah,
Okay, if we're
yeah.
going to just...
But I think we should keep it handy because we get on these.
Yeah. I'm going to, like, end this for now.